This is Sports Professor Rick Horrow, and it's Beyond the Scoreboard, the show that goes well beyond and inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports, marketing, legal, financial, business, all aspects of it. Anything that's not X's and O's, we cover it here. Special interview with the Olympics in Tokyo. Less than a year away, we brought back Thomas Bach, the president of the International Olympic Committee, with a hard-earned interview that we did 3 years ago at the Pan Am Games in Toronto. But his perspective is incredible because he talked about issues that are obviously still relevant today and thought it was really important to deal with. But when you think about all of the things that are spiraling around, it becomes obvious why the level-headed Mr. Bach needs to be brought into the equation. An 18-month Senate investigation found that the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee and USA Gymnastics knowingly concealed the sexual abuse of gymnasts by a team doctor, says the New York Times. And the investigation described alarming and dysfunctional systems that allowed emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, swimming, figure skating, taekwondo, gymnastics. And as a result of the investigation, the Empowering Olympic and Amateur Athletes Act of 2019 would not only create accountability but establish procedures. That act would be required to provide more oversight of governing bodies while also establish clear procedures to report abuse and increase congressional oversight. It'll also fund nonprofit work. The organization currently pays $3.1 million per year to Safe Sport, a nonprofit that investigates sexual misconduct in Olympic sports. The bill would require them to pay $20 million annually instead. Let's follow its progress. And lawmakers could also fire the entire board and quadruple the money the Federation provides to the U.S. Center for Safe Sport. Blumenthal called the bill a moment of reckoning and believes it demonstrates.
We're going to take a short break, but when we return, more Rick Horrow, the sports professor. Welcome back to Beyond the Scoreboard with Rick Horrow. We pick up right where we left off.
Congress's willingness to create a seismic cultural shift in the protection of athletes from abuse. Well, let's see how that all shakes out. Obviously, it is an incredibly big deal. When you think about what's happening in the next couple of years, we not only focus on what's happened with the Winter Olympics, but we're going to Tokyo. Tokyo 2020 is set to be the first multi-platform Olympic Games. Thousands of streams and video replays available to viewers in a variety of devices, dramatically expanding upon the number of contextual targeting opportunities. And a massive portion of U.S. viewing will be time shifted, obviously a 13-hour difference in time zones. And although Rio 2016 may have been a disappointment for Olympic advertisers, tech-savvy brands will ensure Tokyo 2020 would be highly profitable. Obviously, we're entering the age of digital and leaving potentially the age of over the top. A lot of issues to discuss. Thomas Bach, by the way, was an Olympic fencer and was elected the 9th IOC president on September 16 of 2013. A lawyer, a West German. He's in the middle of the back end of his 8-year term as the IOC president and brought an air of sensibility and a little bit of transparency to the IOC. Some would say long overdue. An interview that had some very significant issues to it and is still incredibly relevant today. Thomas Bach.
One of Bach's key priorities is inclusion, bringing diversity into the games and bringing the games to diverse parts of the world.
I'm very confident there that at the end we will have great games. And until then, there is not a single moment to lose. But this is not unusual for games. Organizing the games is a very complex project and needs day-to-day attention. But at the end, I think we will see the great passion of the Brazilians, their great passion for sport and for life. And we will see an excellent organization with the backdrop of La Ciudad Maravillosa, of this marvelous city of Rio de Janeiro. So I'm really looking forward to this moment.
And there's an interesting trade-off, because you've said that it is important to take the Olympic movement to places that it's never been before. But of course, that poses some intellectual, financial, and logistical challenges. How do you balance that trade-off?
I think we should understand the diversity of the world as an enrichment. And we should appreciate that in different parts of the world there are different perceptions of what Olympic Games can be and should be. And this, for me, is one of the fascinations of the Olympic idea and the Olympic Games. That you have the core values of these Olympic Games, that you have these athletes, the best athletes of the world coming together under one roof, delivering the best sport the world and the human beings can offer, and at the same time sending this strong message of unity of the world.
There can't be one cookie cutter fits all process. There has to be some diversity.
Now, if one edition of the Olympic Games would be a copy of another one, it would become quite boring after the second or third edition. And by just having such a blueprint, we would not really reach out to the world. Let the people be creative. Let each host country show its culture to the world and make the world understand that there are different ways to reach the same goal, and the same goal is organizing excellent Olympic Games.
Interesting wrinkle in Rio. We've got rugby, we've got golf. I don't know if you're a rugby player. Are you a golfer?
I'm a rugby player since about 8 weeks.
8 weeks ago, a rugby player. A quick learner. So golfer? Do you play golf?
No, not really. I tested now during the Olympic Day we had in the IOC headquarters a golf exhibition. And the people were kind enough to tell me I would have some talent, but
I suspect they probably would tell you that anyway. But you got to keep your head.
That's what I'm saying. They were polite enough. It was maybe more polite than honest.
Well, but regardless, Rio, excited about those sports. How do you think they'll help the movement?
I think they will put a very special spice to the Olympic Games, and these rugby sevens will give the opportunity to parts of the world to be on top, maybe even to win medals, which were not so prominently based there in the Olympic Games. I was recently to visit in Fiji, and there the whole nation is looking forward to rugby sevens in the Olympic Games because they think they could win their first ever gold medal in Olympic Games there. And golf is an extremely popular sport. We're looking forward to having the best golfers of the world there competing for their country, competing for the National Olympic Committee. And I think they will make the same experience as, for instance, the NBA players did some time ago, or the NHL players are making in the Winter Games. They will get addicted to the Olympic spirit, to the way of living in the Olympic village, and to this Olympic competition.
The bedrock of the Olympics' financial success in recent decades has been the top sponsor program, an exclusive sponsorship tier that's brought prestigious global brands on board as Olympic partners. As more professional athletes participate in the Games, it's become impractical to enforce rules that keep them from promoting their individual sponsors. Yet still, Thomas Bach has managed to keep increasing revenue from the top sponsor category.
First of all, we are very happy to see the top program being appreciated by the business community. And in fact, we have signed just recently a number of very important contracts. And in all these contracts, in all these negotiations, in all these discussions, the Olympic Agenda 2020, our strategy for the future of the Olympic movement, played an important role. And this, of course, is very encouraging for us. To have this commitment by the business community telling us we have confidence in the way you're going. We want to be part of it. We do not only want to be part of it, we want to support it. We want to contribute.
We're going to take a short break, but when we return, more Rick Horrow, the sports professor. Welcome back to Beyond the Scoreboard with Rick Horrow. We pick up right where we left off.
The tweet.
Rule 40 has been a very important vehicle to protect sponsors, but there is a bit of relaxation, especially with some of the individual sports like golf, where you respect sponsors who have come in with existing relationships. How do you feel about the trade-off and the relaxation going ahead?
I think that we have to be pragmatic, and we also have to appreciate what sponsors are doing for athletes outside the Olympic Games. And if you're in a situation there of having athletes who are enjoying a sponsorship by a particular company for years and years, then again we have to find a pragmatic solution. So far, everybody is quite happy with this compromise.
Television. The Discovery deal through 2024 surprised everybody. How important is that deal to the future of the Olympic movement?
I think it's very important because with this agreement, we will see a multi-platform approach to Olympic broadcast in Europe for the first time. We will see a program which is directed at youth, which is making use of the platforms the youth is attracted to. And we see a very good offer for cooperation also with regard to the Olympic channel. And that means that then, for the first time, we will have Olympic sports being present not only for the 16 days of glory, but 365 days a year. So the coverage will be much broader than before.
Let's talk about the Olympic Channel, obviously pledged as part of the Agenda 2020. When does it start? How many homes? How can you buy it? Who's going to run it? Give me specifics.
First of all, we will start with a digital channel, and this will be free for everybody who wants to follow. And then we will see, and in fact, we're already talking with some of the rights holders how we can expand maybe this worldwide digital channel to the linear platform on a national or a regional way. This is how we want to start. And this is what we are working very hard for now.
It's been a turbulent year for international sports. In the spring, the IOC faced criticism from Sport Accord, an umbrella organization representing international sports federations. Bach responded decisively, suspending recognition and funding for the group and committing to restructure the IOC's relationship with its member federations. Here's what Bach has to say about the Sport Accord controversy.
It was obvious in the recent months that the member federations or former member federations of Sport Accord had a very different view from the role Sport Accord should play. Just to give you an idea, in the past, we were subsidizing Sport Accord and paying for a program in the anti-doping. What the IFs agree and we are ready to do is, rather than paying others than to do the work, why don't we offer it directly and keep the direct contact with the international federations?
You've remarked about FIFA, where it's been, where it's going, a painful restructuring process that may need to be transparent. Where does FIFA go?
No, this is up to FIFA to
Clearly,
decide.
but,
I think you expected the answer. But we have our own experience in the IOC. We had a really tough restructuring period about 15 years ago. Now with Olympic Agenda 2020, we have adapted our organization, our governance to the latest standards of good governance in many respects. I'm sure that FIFA will find a way to restructure, will find a way to introduce steps the IOC has introduced already a long time ago. Speaking about term limits, for instance, the age limit, and others more.
But the context of important, tangible identity or indicators of corruption reform, very important to you as well as you move forward, correct?
What we have to do is to put all the instruments in place to have the best possible prevention with regard to corruption. This is what the IOC has done. We have very strict rules with regard, for instance, for candidatures for Olympic Games. First of all, the whole session is electing the host city Secondly, the IOC members cannot visit candidate cities. Presentations are very limited, and so on and so on. We have adapted our organization following the advice also of NGOs like Transparency International, like experts from United Nations and others. So there, everything is in place for prevention and in case of an infringement of the rules for sanctioning this.
The continental oriented games, Commonwealth Games, Asian Games, Pan American Games, positive for the overall Olympic effort?
If they're well coordinated, then it can be positive for, in particular, for the continents there. And this is another effort we're undertaking in the framework of Olympic Agenda 2020, there to have a more concerted effort to look into the yearly schedule of sports events and to try there to avoid duplications and to safeguard also the interests of the athletes in this respect for not having too many important competitions in a short period of time.
In 2012, the USOC and the IOC signed a revenue-sharing agreement that was seen as an important step in repairing a long-standing rift. Since the two sides resolved their financial issues, they've also made considerable progress in other areas of cooperation. So I asked Thomas Bach how he sees the IOC relationship with the U.S.
I think it has improved a lot. We see with the now not so new anymore, but still new leadership in USOC, a very different attitude. USOC is much more part of the worldwide Olympic family. They're reaching out to many other national Olympic committees. They're reaching out to athletes in developing countries. They're reaching out to the IOC. So this is quite a change. And this different approach by the now leadership of USOC, I think makes Olympic sport much stronger in the United States, but is also strengthening the role of American Olympic sports in the worldwide sports community.
Would you agree that there's a bit more international receptivity to look at the bids from U.S. cities in a more positive context, maybe?
Yes, but...
We're going to take a short break, but when we return, more Rick Horrow, the sports professor. Welcome back to Beyond the Scoreboard with Rick Horrow, the sports professor. We're going to rewind our featured interview, reset the show a little bit, and pick up from there. Here's Rick Horrow.
Games, Commonwealth Games, Asian Games, Pan American Games, positive for the overall Olympic effort?
If they're well coordinated, then it can be positive for, in particular, for the continents there. And this is another effort we're undertaking in the framework of Olympic Agenda 2020, there to have a more concerted effort to look into the yearly schedule of sports events and to try there to avoid duplications and to safeguard also the interests of the athletes in this respect for not having too many important competitions in a short period of time.
In 2012, the USOC and the IOC signed a revenue-sharing agreement that was seen as an important step in repairing a long-standing rift. Since the two sides resolved their financial issues, they've also made considerable progress in other areas of cooperation. So I asked Thomas Bach how he sees the IOC relationship with the U.S.
I think it has improved a lot. We see with the now not so new anymore, but still new leadership in USOC, a very different attitude. Their USOC is much more part of the worldwide Olympic family. They're reaching out to many other national Olympic committees. They're reaching out to athletes in developing countries. They're reaching out to the IOC. So this is quite a change. And this different approach by the now leadership of USOC, I think makes Olympic sport much stronger in the United States, but is also strengthening the role of American Olympic sports in the worldwide sports community.
Would you agree that there's a bit more international receptivity to look at the bids from U.S. cities in a more positive context, maybe?
Yes, but again, I think because of this different approach, because of this reaching out, because of this the opening up, this was important. This mentality change, from my point of view, was much more important than anything else.
Let's talk about Agenda 2020 for a couple of minutes. Sweeping changes covering every aspect of the Olympic movement. What are you most proud of about 2020?
That we achieved this change. And we achieved it with a unanimous decision, because we had to convince people that the change was necessary, and change was necessary now. If you look at Olympic Agenda 2020, it's the clear message that the International Olympic Committee is ready to take the challenges of the future on, is ready to answer the questions of the youth, is ready to answer the questions of society, and is not just managing the next edition of the Olympic Games, but is really trying to look the 15, 20, 25 years ahead.
You're obviously prepared and unafraid to tackle the hard questions. Doping, sexual orientation, all of those issues.
I think you cannot ignore the just questions and challenges. You know, sport, I think, for many years, in particular in Europe, had the problem that you would say sport has nothing to do with politics, that means with the rest of society. Sport has nothing to do with money. This was already wrong for the ancient games 3,000 years ago, and it's even more wrong today. Sport today is an important part of society. You cannot ignore the questions being put forward by society, that you cannot ignore the challenges society at large is facing. So therefore, at the end, these questions were not difficult. It was just logic and necessary to try to find an answer to them.
You're changing the world at breakneck speed. You're protecting the Olympic movement. Are you having fun?
Yes. Sport is always also about joy in life. You know? Sport is a very positive component of our life. It's a real enjoyable task because you can do something for the athletes and also for the athletes of the future.
Well, Thomas Bach obviously has a lot of very significant things to say, and we will continue to follow what he has been doing and what he has been promising up until and through the Tokyo 2020 Olympics next summer. Let's shift to football. And before we talk about things on the field, very, very important issue for me. When I was in junior high and in high school, I worshipped number 85 middle linebacker Nick Buoniconti as the linchpin of the undefeated 1972 Super Bowl champion Miami Dolphins. And after graduating at Harvard Law School, I came back to South Florida ready to embark on a sports career. Unfortunately, other than the Dolphins, no major league sports were to be had, and I was working with a commercial law firm in Miami. My dream was to help bring the next set of sports franchises to South Florida. Nick was an established practicing lawyer in Miami, having studied by night at Suffolk Law School while playing for the then Boston Patriots. And after meeting him, it became obvious that I wanted to work with him. We agreed that I would work with him and Dolphin owner Joe Robbie to create the first Miami Sports Authority and to work to bring other pro sports to South Florida. So Nick was my original legal mentor in Miami. His vision, understanding, and mixture of outward toughness and inner compassion would never, ever be forgotten. It was amazing when he announced that he would donate his brain to science 2 years ago for CTE study, and even more amazing that he was known for so many other things beyond football. I treasured the time with him, and I will always honor his legacy. Other football issues are dealing with the pocketbook, not just Nick Buoniconti. According to the team marketing report, the ticket prices, by the way, for all games this year skyrocket about 40% across NFL stadiums, and you'll spend close to $200 per person to see the game at the priciest pro football meccas. University of California, Berkeley did the research. Their fan calculations factor in ticket prices, parking, and what you pay for a beer plus a hot dog. The 5 most expensive NFL stadiums for fans, using numbers for the study: number 5, Gillette, Patriots. Average fan cost, $181.98. Number 4, Levi's and the 49ers, $191.50. Number 3, Redskins FedEx Field. Average fan cost, $192.02. Number 2, Soldier Field in Chicago. Average fan cost $195.15. And coming in at number 1, AT&T Stadium, home of the Cowboys. And despite Jerry World having pioneered the standing room only concept in stadiums, the average fan cost there, $199.20 per seat. Well, other NFL issues, for example, and it's not just in the stadium, it's the name. Did Do you remember Heinz's 57 flavors? Well, Heinz may be highly unlikely to renew its stadium naming rights deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers when the existing contract expires in 2021, according to the Sports Business Journal. The 68,000-seat venue has been known as Heinz Field since opening in 2001, but no one across the naming rights industry expects the company's name to be attached to the stadium beyond the current deal. Kraft Heinz is now headquartered in Chicago following its 2015 merger with Kraft Foods Group. And the original 20-year deal signed by the Steelers and Heinz was reported to be worth $57 million, which worked out to about $2.85 million per year. 57 flavors. Teams in similar markets, though, to Pittsburgh bring in far more money to the Steelers each year. For example, the Eagles signed a 14-year renewal in May with Lincoln Financial Group worth a reported $167 million, providing the franchise with about $12 million per year. And amid skyrocketing naming rights fees, Kraft Heinz apparently decided to throw in the terrible towel. We'll have to see how that all shakes out down the road. And an issue regarding esports and the NFL. EA Madden's NFL eSport Championship gets ad backing from Snickers and Pizza Hut. The Madden NFL 20 Championship Series this year has opened registration to draw the greatest number of esports competitors in its history. Pizza Hut, the first brand to win naming rights to a virtual football stadium, while Snickers will return as an official sponsor of the tournament. According to Marketing Dive, the esports dates will be synchronized with the NFL kickoff from August 30 to September 1. After that, events will happen during key NFL moments, including the Madden NFL 20 Club Championship on December 18 to 21 before the playoffs, and the Madden NFL 20 Challenge from January 30 to February 1 before the Super Bowl. This is the first time a brand will have full naming rights to a virtual stadium, which shows the full dive brands are making into esports bigger and bigger every year. Let's talk golf. Brooks Koepka, by the way, he's taking his money that he's recently earned all the way to the bank. Four-time major champion picked up his third non-major victory at the PGA Tour at the FedEx St. Jude WGC, but the cash windfall victory brought with it perhaps was more impressive than his three-shot victory, according to Swing U Clubhouse. The added bonuses Koepka has accrued, culminating with his victory, could make the PGA Tour player's career. In Memphis, the Koepka dollar paycheck, $1.75 million. But his win.
We're going to take a short break, but when we return, more Rick Horrow, the sports professor. Welcome back to Beyond the Scoreboard with Rick Horrow. We pick up right where we left off.
And also earned 550 FedEx Cup points, which only one event left in the regular season. The Wyndham last week solidified his spot atop the regular season standings. And as a result, the Tour's new regular season payout structure, called the Wyndham Rewards, also gives the top 10 players in the FedEx Cup standings at the end of the season a bonus, wrapped up a week ahead of time by Koepka. Pretty easy to do. And for that accomplishment, he earned an additional $2 million. Last, and technically not least, he earned a $1 million Aon Risk Reward Challenge competition that uses a scoring system to reward aggressive and well-executed play throughout the year. Nobody should hold a bake sale for Brooks Koepka. Finally, let's talk NBA. And when we talk about people walking away from their agreements, let's keep in mind Kevin Durant. He leaves his heart away from San Francisco. He goes to Brooklyn, but he wanted to make sure his name was still going to be associated with the Bay Area by leaving a renovated basketball court at the Hayes Valley Playground in San Francisco. Last week, the San Francisco Recreation and Parks celebrated the reopening of Hayes Valley Playground at Buchanan and Hayes Streets, a renovation partially funded by Durant's charity. One of the founders of Airbnb also helped. Local artist Apexer worked on vintage contractors to create a masterpiece which held a lot of detail, including special paint and the right colors for the surface. Durant found that his foundation to enrich the lives of at-risk youth from low-income backgrounds through educational, athletic, and social programs. This latest collaboration clearly meets that goal. Well, we'd like to thank Tanner Simpkins and Reed Weber for helping us put this together, along with Dan Martin. We'd like to thank, obviously, Thomas Bach for lending his name and credibility a couple of years ago with an interview that is relevant today as it was before. And we'd like to thank you for listening and watching, and join us next week when we go Beyond the Scoreboard.